A very good evening. Welcome on a Monday night to the West Ham Weekly on the West Ham Voice. Thank you all for joining me as usual. My name is Stel. If you don't know me yet, and if you don't know this channel, please do hit the like and subscribe button and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. No football, so we must be all relaxed. Really, you know, there's nothing to moan about, nothing to worry about, nothing to be concerned about, really. We haven't kicked a ball over the past week and a half, 2 weeks or so. So what's the problem? Everything's fine and hunky-dory, isn't it? Well, even if we haven't kicked a ball, there's still an awful lot of stuff to talk about. Still a lot of awful lot of rumours that are happening with regards to West Ham United and the future ownership. Now we're hearing an awful lot about the stadium and other things that are going on there. So I'm going to bring you up to date with all of that stuff over the next sort of hour or so. But let's see who's in the chat and say hello to people. Let's go all the way to the top. Good evening, Epic. How are you? Good evening, Raynham. How are you, mate? Thank you for joining. Mr. Levin, how are you? Evening. I will clock in 30 minutes. You do that, and you'll just about be catching up with me being on late. Have you heard anything about the Ghent tickets yet? NWO, good evening to you. 25 minutes early. Pornhub it is. Or Pornhub in that case. Good evening, usual suspect. How are you? Good evening, James. How are you? Perennially happy? Well, I'm happy because we haven't lost the game. So that can't be bad, can it? Good evening, Graham. I'm both excited and nervous for the Saints game. And I believe if Moyes gets this wrong, there is little chance of staying up. I would be inclined to agree with you, to be honest with you, Graham. We're a week away from that, aren't we? So let's see what happens there. Good evening, Andy. I'm very well. Hope you are too. Not sure the nerves will be able to take it this weekend. It's essential we get the 3 points. Absolutely agree. It's got to be, hasn't it? You know, last week I talked about the games that we had. And if you watched the Friday night show as well, you would have seen the games, the fixtures that we've got coming up. And really, we have got to start with a win this coming weekend. There really isn't an alternative. There's no pragmatism to be had there. And I'm going to talk about that and what Coufal said about David Moyes a little later on. Good evening, Galispella to you, Keith. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. Good evening to you, Ed. How are you? Mark, how are you? Nice of you to join. Good evening, Aaron. How are you, mate? Nice of you to join. Jack, I wonder if Stills is chatting with the missus. Well, I did check the internet today to make sure it was properly working. And as I left that living room, the internet was fine and dandy. You never know what will happen, though. Halfway through the evening, you know, anything could happen. I might have another chat with the missus. Good evening, Martin. How are you? I hope you're well. Hope Monday wasn't too bad. Well, Monday's Monday, isn't it? You know, back to work. You get that. I don't know if you get that feeling anymore, but I get to around about 6, 7 o'clock on Sunday night and I start getting a bit unhappy because I know what's coming next is a Monday morning work day. And it was like, oh, anyway, let's not moan. Ed again. Monday's been great. Well, there you go. Monday's been great for Ed. Good evening to you, Paul. How are you? Thanks for joining. Good evening, Daniela. How are you? Who else we got? Stuart, how are you? And we will beat the Saints. we have got to beat the Saints. It's not a case of we just got to, haven't we? Aaron, yeah, all relaxed, sitting in the bottom three. We're very relaxed, aren't we? We'll be all right. We'll be all right. Good evening, Chris. How are you? Good evening to you, Bill. How are you? Huge. How are you? Good to see you as well. Do you agree Everton should have points deducted this season? I must be missing something. I don't know what about. So if you can enlighten me. See, when I do these shows, I just focus on West Ham. So I've got no clue what's going on in the rest of the Premier League. What have they done to warrant getting points up? Seriously, if you let me know, I'll give you my opinion. Good evening, James. How are you? Foe, how are you? You know, Foe, I saw you round about, I know it's going to sound a bit weird, but I saw you round about the men's losing the last home game. I was turned around to go and say hello to you, and then you were gone. So next time I see you, I'll shout your name out and embarrass you. Daniela, has anyone seen the story that Chelsea have put a request to... Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Well, from what I know about it. Good evening, Rocky's Rocky. How are you? I hope you're well, mate. Twitter, I posted that 30 minutes ago. Oh, well, I didn't know that, did I? Well, thank you for coming on so early. Who else have we got? Ghent in a day or so. Good. I wonder how many points, they're going to give us. Everyone's speculating that the reason why they've taken so long to announce the away tickets is because that we've negotiated more than 900 odd. Who knows? Who knows? It'll be interesting. Good evening to you, Juha. How are you, mate? And good evening, Jason. How are you? Good evening, Lee. I hope you're well, mate. Huge again. You can only lose 100 million over 3 years. They have lost 350 million over 3 years. Well, that deserves a point deduction. Point deduction probably deserves more than that, I think. Wow, I didn't realise that. That's a massive loss. Are they going out of business? Juha, Everton have losses of over 370 million in the last 3 years when the limit is 105. Wow. Martin, I thought that was I was the only one who gets the Sunday night horrors. No, everybody does, especially when you're supporting West Ham. Huge. Have been charged by the Premier League. Well, points deduction without a shadow of a doubt. Minimum, isn't it? We're saved, people. We're not going down. There you go. Imagine if I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it, but I will. Imagine if Everton got points deducted and we still went down. How shit would we have been if that happened? Anyway, let's move on to. I saw you. I ran in the other direction. We certainly will, mate. West Ham staying up by default. Don't count on it, Chris. You never know. Right, there's not an awful lot to talk about, but I'll tell you what we will do. Now we're talking about fixtures. Let's talk about the fixture changes that have come up. I mean, it's bad enough, isn't it, West Ham United, that we've got a tough April. And a tough May coming up, and TV companies, and of course, with cup competitions and all that sort of stuff. The devil has saw to it that we're gonna play the two Manchester teams in the same week. I mean, I fear that. But anyway, first up, it's Man City. The game has been moved to 3rd of May at 8 p.m. That means. There you go. Anyone that got a ticket for that game who was thinking they're going to go to Manchester at the weekend are going to miss out, because there's an awful lot of people that are going to go, I can't afford another day off, because it does mean another day off. You won't be able to get home, which is a little bit frustrating. So it's on the 3rd of May, Wednesday, the 3rd of May at 8 p.m., just to make sure that we cannot get back in time. And then, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't ever remember a Sunday game being played at 7 o'clock at night. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, the only consolation is there's a bank holiday the day after, which ain't a bad thing, I guess. But we're playing Man United on the 7th of May at 7 p.m. Now, interestingly, I said about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, with all the fixtures, I don't mind evening games. And I actually don't mind evening games on a Saturday evening, 7 or 8 o'clock. I don't mind evening games on a Sunday as well. Chance would have it, I'm going to be away for that particular game, which is a shame. But only if you can get back into at home, no transport problems, etc. I kind of don't mind that. But the one against Man City, I mean, I guess it was inevitable with their cup competition, with our cup run as well in the Europa Conference. It was inevitable that it was going to be held in midweek. But there you go. It is what it is. Right. What other brief news have we got? Well, there's not a lot of under 18s and under 21 news because of the international break, but the women's team have been in action, and I wish they hadn't, or they wish they hadn't, because they got absolutely drubbed at the weekend in a 4-0 defeat against Man United. The last win that they had came against in the League Cup back in January when they beat Wolves in the FA Cup back in January when they beat Wolves 2-0. Despite getting a number of draws, their last league win was back in December when we beat Spurs. The first 45 minutes against Man United seemed quite good for the ladies. Hard-working display, saw the teams go in 0-0 at half-time, and then we shot ourselves in the foot. Within 7 minutes or so of the second half, we gave away a penalty, and then the floodgates opened, unfortunately. Now, despite that, we still lie 7th in the league, surprisingly so, even though we haven't won a game in the league since December. It doesn't look like we're not in a precarious situation in facing relegation in the Women's League, but any more losses like that, and it could be curtains for Mr. Kretinsky, who started off really well, didn't he? He revitalised the squad. He brought in a whole load of new players, etc. Really sort of gave them an umph, and then it all went flat, unfortunately. So I hope he does better, because it'd be nice to see Kretinsky actually do well in the with the women's team. Right, who else have we got? The stadium disputes, Jack. I assume it's because the 167 million paid for shares and LLDC want to cut up their dough under the sale. Yes, it is that. It's got an awful lot to do with Kretinsky, but there's other news as well, which you may or may not know about. So I'll come back to that in a little while. Daniela, 4 to 6 of the relegation teams will lose points this weekend. I hope it ain't West Ham. And I hope we pick up points. We've only got to win a game and have a few teams around us lose. And all of a sudden we jump up to something like 14th place. But anyway, epic. The points won't be deducted this season even if they're found guilty. There you go. False dawn. We are going down anyway. You are. Everton will get penalty next season at the earliest. Good evening to you, Steve. I hope you're well. I think I'm going to have to be well pissed to watch the game on Sunday. Don't worry. It's going to be a doddle. Jonathan, Everton most likely to have points deducted next season. Thank you for correcting me on that. Aaron, no, the point. Yeah, thank you for correcting me. Jonathan, has Kretinsky been having dinner with Moyes? I don't know, but it's not looking good for him. Right, okay, let's go. Let's jump to the first or the main part of the show. Right, as it stands, there aren't any new injury news to bring you up to date on. Basically, the last time I was on, I mentioned about Lucas Fabianski being back in training, and it's a 50-50 whether he plays against Southampton at the weekend. I'm a bit nervous about that, to be quite honest with you. I said it before. I've said it in the last couple of weeks, that anyone that's going to have to wear a face mask, if it's a goalie, more than anything, I'd be a little bit nervous about a goalie going in goal with a face mask on. It might sort of make him think twice about going in for a challenge, etc., in case he gets hurt. So he's back in training. Whether he'll actually be picked against Southampton or whether Areola will keep his place, I don't know. The only other injury that we were concerned about was Mikel Antonio. He was carrying a calf strain before the international break, and we're told that it's still 50-50 for him as to whether he'll be available for selection against Southampton as well. The only other injury, of course, was Vladimir Coufal. We thought he was going to be out for a lot longer, and then, of course, he was in action for the Czech Republic against Poland, and I believe he's in action tonight against Moldova as well. So it looks like he's past his injury, which is good news. The one bit of loan news is with regards to Brian Kinnear, who's on loan at Falkirk, one of our young under-21s goalkeeper. He played at the weekend against Kelty Hearts. And despite Falkirk having 68% possession, 14 shots on with 4 on target, he had very little to do, but it still finished 0-0. But it's good to see him getting some game time. But of course, most people have been in action on international duty this week. And we've had no fewer than 10 senior players in action and something like 8 academy players as well, which is really, really good. Now, when you look at it, the senior players in action include Alphonse Areola. Okay, he's a sub for France. As I've just mentioned, Coufal. We've got Ben Johnson, who's been in action for the England under-21s. Thilo Kehrer for Germany. Naifa Gerd for Morocco. Emerson, who's been in action for Italy. Paquetá, who's been in action for Brazil. Souček for Czech Republic. Declan Rice, of course, and Gianluca Scamacca. Now, they've all had sort of differing international time. You know, some of them have played decent games. Others have appeared 4 or 5 minutes here or there. But under-21s, or the academy, should I say, have also had quite a few players. Christian Hegge, he's been called into the senior squad for the Hungary team, which is fantastic. Well done to him. Alongside him there is young keeper Finley Herrick, called into the under-17s team. And then we've got Ollie Scholes, who's been called into the England under-18s team. Divine Mbama for England under-19s. Josh Briggs for the Northern Ireland under-17s, who's central defender. Plus Armstrong Oko Flex has been called into the Republic of Ireland under-21 squad. Then we have Callum Marshall, who's been picked for the Northern Ireland under-19. So well done to them. There's quite a lot of players in the academy that are really getting a good look in for their respective international teams. But how have they fared? How have they done? Have they played many games? Or have they seen many minutes? Well, first off, we'll start off with Northern Ireland. They had 3 under-19 UEFA Championship qualifiers to play against France, Romania and Norway. Neither Forbes nor Marshall were involved in the 1-0 defeat against France last week, but Callum Marshall, did play in the next game against Romania, and despite putting his team level 1-1 from the penalty spot, unfortunately Northern Ireland lost that game 3-1. They face Norway again on Tuesday, so it'll be interesting to see whether Callum Marshall or Forbes make that game. Northern Ireland's under-17 team, although they also had three under-17 UEFA Championship qualifiers against the Netherlands, where they lost 2-1. Josh Briggs, the central defender for West Ham, was in that game. And then next up at the weekend, the game against England, where they lost 2-0. Briggs played in that game as well. They have one more game coming up on Tuesday as well. Ollie Scarles, he received his England under-18s debut in a 2-1 win over Croatia, and then he played the full 90 minutes in the 3-0 defeat against Belgium. Both games were friendlies. And then, of course, Divine Mbama, our very own future star. Divine Mbama was in action for England. He played the first 60 minutes in the 1-0 win, UEFA Under-19s Championship qualifier against Hungary. He also started in the 1-0 Championship qualifier defeat against Iceland. And guess who he was replaced by? Someone called Sonny Perkins. I don't know who he is. Anyway, England's next qualifying game is against Turkey on Tuesday night. So we'll see if Mbama is involved in that. Next up, Ben Johnson for the England under-21 teams. He was a 78th minute substitute in the 4-0 friendly win against France over the weekend. England's next game is also on Tuesday night against Croatia, another friendly game. Another friendly game. So we're waiting to see if Ben Johnson will play in that one. Next up, for the senior team, Lucas Paqueta. He created the assist for Casemiro in the friendly game between Morocco and Brazil, when Naif Aguerd was also involved. However, it wasn't enough, as Morocco came back and won that game 2-1. Aguerd is also likely to be in the team in the friendly against Peru on Tuesday night, whereas Brazil don't have another international game to play. Now, I really hope, when we're looking at some of our players that are in action, I really hope Aguerd gets through that game as Peru doesn't get any injuries and comes back fit for the weekend. Thilo Kehrer was in action for Germany as a late sub against Peru, where they won 2-0. He may also again be in action for Germany when they face Belgium in another friendly on Tuesday night. Now, he was in the press conference. So but normally when a player is part of the press conference, you normally get to see that the player is actually going to play. So Kehrer is quite likely to play some part against Belgium on Tuesday. Now, Alphonse Areola, kind of feel sorry for him. He would have been disappointed to find himself falling down in favour for the France national team. And he's fallen behind AC Milan's Mike Maignan. Now, it's considered for some time that Areola was always likely to be the second choice behind Hugo Lloris. And now that he's retired from international duty, I think many thought or hoped that Areola would become France's number one. But unfortunately, not so. Because of his lack of playing time at West Ham United, he's kind of fallen down the pecking order again. And he seems to have been overlooked, like I said, for Maignan, who made his 6th international appearance for France in the Euro Championship qualifying game against Netherlands, where France beats them 4-0. Look, in all honesty, when it comes to Mike Maignan, it's quite possible that had he not suffered a calf injury throughout the World Cup, he probably would have been second choice to Hugo Lloris anyway. It's just unfortunate that given that Areola is finally making some appearances for West Ham, Maignan has come back from his own injury and is now first choice for the French team. This situation will create a bit of a concern, I think, for Areola. I'm sure he must be wondering whether staying with West Ham United beyond this season will be damaging to his potential future international career. He won't want to be in the same position as he has been for the last couple of seasons, where he's found himself behind Lucas Fabianski as a first choice for the West Ham team. And now, of course, that's now affecting him in international as well. Many are saying he's no longer even second choice. He could be third choice for the France team. Now, I know they're playing tonight. I know Maignan was selected yet again. But if anyone's got any updates on the Czech Republic or the France game, do let me know as the show goes on. Right, after much hype, Roberto Mancini was talking about using players from the English league to play against England at the weekend. You know, apparently he bigged up Scamacca and Emerson by talking about how they understood the English game, etc., etc. Only to find that he didn't use Emerson at all against us, and Scamacca got what, 2 minutes? Bloody hell. We moan about David Moyes only giving Scamacca a couple of minutes. Mancini did a David Moyes. Anyway, we've seen the game, haven't we? It was a 2-1 win for England. And I was actually really looking forward to seeing how Mancini might have utilised Scamacca, who he might have played alongside, to see the sort of style of football that Scamacca can produce when he has support around him. And then maybe Moyes might have picked something up in order to use Scamacca in a different way for us. But instead, all eyes were really on Declan Rice. It was his game, wasn't it? He stole the headlines, not only for the goal he scored on the 13th minute, but also proving to a lot of his doubters just how a well-rounded footballer he really is. You know, he commanded that midfield at the weekend or last Friday. He put in a fantastic performance all round, and it was great for him to get the goal as well. And it kind of proved maybe that he shouldn't be taking corners for West Ham. He should be on the receiving end of corners or waiting for something to come off a corner, by scoring that goal. We hadn't won it in Italian soil since 1961. Now, I know we've beaten Italy, several times since then, but it was the first time we beat them on Italian soil since 1961. So well done to them. The Italians were back in action on Sunday where they played Malta in their second championship qualifying game. And this time, Emerson got a full 90 minutes against them. And apparently he played very well as well. I didn't watch the game, but he played very well. And Scamacca, he also got a bit more of a run in. Rather than 2 minutes, he came on as a sub on the 66th minute for Italy as well. Next up is the Czech duo. I've already mentioned Vladimir Coufal was selected, much to the dismay, I guess, of West Ham United, given that he was injured and he's missed the last 5 games for us. But Thomas Souček was there as well. We captained the team, as he usually does. He captained them to a 3-1 win over Poland, where he played the full 90 minutes, and Coufal was substituted on the 71st minute. Now, there's some conflicting stories that he went off because he picked up an ankle injury, but it seems not, because he was selected for the game tonight, where the Czech Republic are playing against Moldova in another championship qualifier. So, like I said, if you've got any details on the France game or any details on the Moldova Czech Republic game, do let me know. Again, we're hoping, just like our other international players, that they're going to come through this game unscathed. We really need Coufal down the right-hand side, don't we? And given that he's proven that he's fit enough, I think that's fantastic for us. Right, that's the roundup for the internationals. But staying on on Vladimir Coufal, there's an awful lot of discussion, isn't there? He did a very interesting interview before the game last week and talked about West Ham United's plight. He was asked questions about David Moyes, and he came out with a few interesting comments. He stated what many of us already know. He said that Moyes, in fact, is a very pragmatic manager. He said that Moyes is a pure pragmatist, where the end justifies the means, where the end justifies the means even at the expense of everything and sometimes even the game. So basically what he was saying is kind of what we all know. Really pragmatic. He's not going to necessarily go for it. He's going to try and, see the game out. If he can get a draw here, there and everywhere, then that's what he'll do. But that worries me. That worries me to what's going to happen with the last 12 remaining games in the Premier League, because we can't afford pragmatism, can we? We have to go for it. We have to, David Moyes, as people have said, or other players have said throughout the season, he's got to unshackle this team. He's got to let them do what they believe that they can do best. A pragmatic approach for the last 12 remaining games might not be enough to keep us up this season. Look, we've received quite a lot of praise. I mean, even though we've lost quite a lot of games, we've received a lot of praise about our defense. It's only a -10 at the moment, and it's the best I think it's one of the best goal differences down in the bottom half of the league. Great, but that doesn't do us much good if we're not picking up points as well. So going out and being pragmatic, I'm really worried. I think given that we've only won 6 Premier League games all season, in order to stay up, we're going to have to win at least 4 maybe even 5 games before the end of this season. And if David Moyes uses his pragmatic approach, what then? I really kind of worry. It does concern me. It's one of those things where, you know, it is going to keep us up at night, you know, and I can understand when people are saying that they're really nervous in the game coming up against Southampton. If David Moyes goes with a pragmatic approach against Southampton, they're going to smell blood. They're fighting for survival as well. They're going to come buoyed up and they're going to want to beat West Ham because they'll leapfrog us in the league table if they do. So it worries me to a point. David Moyes has got 12 games left in order to get us out of the mire that we're in. We've only won 6 games so far this season. We've got to win at least another 4 or 5. So are we almost going to double the number of games won if we haven't managed to do it in the 26 games so far? 12 games left, a third of the season left, and we need to get 4 or 5 wins. Pragmatic approach is when you think you can get a point from a team like, I don't know, we go away to Man City and maybe try and get a point there. But the games that we're playing at home, maybe get a point against Arsenal. You might turn around and go, fair play. But the other games that we're playing, you know, we've got Newcastle at home, shouldn't have we should be able to give them a game considering what we did at their grounds only a couple of months ago. When it comes to Southampton, a team around us, we've got to go and beat them. We go away to Bournemouth, for example. We go away to Fulham. Can we be pragmatic against them? We've got to try and go for wins there as well. You know, we've got other teams coming to us, Liverpool at home, Man United at home, Man City away, etc. You know, sometimes a pragmatic approach might be the appropriate thing to do against certain teams. But if he uses a pragmatic approach against every team that we've got to play, what then? We can't afford to try and nick goals. The thing with this season is David Moyes has taken pragmatic approaches and it hasn't worked. When he's tried to shut up shop, you know, try to get a clean sheet, etc. Every time he does that, it seems to backfire on us. You know, so and we know, you know, I think I'm preaching to an awful lot of the converted who know that if we use this approach for the rest of this season, we could go down. And that is quite a scary thing. And I know people are saying we've got to be optimistic, etc. You know me, throughout the whole season, I've tried to be as optimistic as I possibly can, thinking that we could get out of it. But that was back in, you know, just before the World Cup, just after the World Cup, just into the new year, a couple of months into the new year. And it's now gotten to March. And I'm thinking, well, something needs to change. But David Moyes isn't going to change. And it's quite interesting that one of his players has talked about him. You know, I don't know if it was, you make your own minds up if you think that he was being dismissive of Moyes or critical of Moyes or whatever. But, you know, it kind of, I think some players, maybe defenders, might think being pragmatic is a good thing. It means that we can keep clean sheets, etc., etc. But if you talk to an attacking player, they're going to go, being pragmatic is no good to me. I want to go out and score goals. If I'm not getting the ball and not getting it played into the areas that I can cause most damage, then what's the point of being pragmatic? You know, trying to get 0-0s here, there, and everywhere isn't going to really bode well, and that does concern me. Anyway. Let's see what you've got to chat about, what you've got to say about it, and then we'll go into the next part of the show. Let's scroll up a little bit to try and catch your comments. Yep, people have told me it'll be next season, so that means we are going down. Jonathan, he should wear a nappy as he shit himself when people go flying into him. Who's that? Oh, Fabianski. E. Davis, good evening to you. If he plays bad vibes in the dressing room, it won't look good, will it? It would worry me, to be quite honest with you. Fabianski's been a great servant to West Ham United. Let's not deny it. Let's not beat around the bush. He's been fantastic. But sometimes certain players, not by their own fault, but if the manager keeps picking them, might be there a season too long. And for me, Fabianski, I've wanted Areola to be number one keeper, even when he came on loan to us last season. I was really surprised it didn't happen this season. Good evening, John. How are you? Damn, I missed the notification. I'm watching Ireland match. They playing well against the... Oh, tell me what the score is. Bill. Moyes has got 2 goalies on the bench. Fab should be one of them until he's fully better. I agree. But let's see what Moyes does. You know, the pragmatic Moyes. Daniela, surely Fab will be best sitting on the bench. Totally agree. Chris, I mean, just looking at the players on international duty absolutely blows my mind how we find ourselves in such a mess. I mean, look at it. You know, look at the number of players that we have. That's almost a full team. You know, decent goalkeeper, all right defense. Well, yeah, some good defenders there. Pretty decent midfield. You know, an Italian number 9, etc. It surprises me too. It is odd, isn't it, that we're languishing, trying to gel these players together. Should it have been so difficult? I don't know. Anyway, we move on. Daniela, just seen that this Carlton Palmer, former England midfielder, suffers a small heart attack. Get well soon, mate. Bad news. Sorry to hear that. E. Davis, Mannion is very good. Not denying it at all. If he's playing for AC Milan, he's bound to be a decent keeper, and I don't dispute that at all. Mannion is a beast, awesome goalkeeper. James Areola is like the Prince of Darkness when it comes to crosses. Not that bad. John, unlucky Ireland, great effort. The Frogs won that for them. Okay, what was the score? So Moldova 0, Czech Republic 0. Has that finished? And did Coufal and Souček make it through? John, Ireland against France 1-0. I'm not going to ask if Areola made it through because we know he didn't play. Foxes, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Bonjour to you, Peter. I hope you're well, mate. John, Ireland, no points, 4th in the group. Next game in June versus Greece, 2nd in the group, 3 points behind France. That'll be a toughie. John again. Hey, Stel, when is the vid on the stats coming out? I wrote it today and I'm going to do it sometime this week. I might put it out tomorrow morning. So look out for that. Someone asked me, and I can't remember who. I thought it was John. It might have been Steve, Tiley, or someone else. Asked me to do an analysis of the stats when Alan Irvine was at West Ham United and since he's left, to see if there's a big differential between us winning games, etc., whilst Irvine was there and since he's left. You're going to be really surprised at the results. So if it wasn't you, John, or if it was you, Steve, or whoever asked me, that show's coming out soon. It's quite interesting. It surprised me. Peter, can't change his spots. Well, what does that mean then? Does that mean we are going down if we're going to be pragmatic? Translation, we're stuffed. Matt, evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Bees Knees. How are you? Carry on playing for draws and it's going to be Curtin. Oh, well done. That's a good joke. Moyes is stubborn. Ian, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Garino. How are you? Should play for a win all the time, Paul. I totally agree. But we know that's not going to happen. We are going to see some backs to the wall games. But I tell you what, it's going to be, if we don't win against Southampton, and then we're looking at backs against the wall games from there on in, we will be doomed. Because even if we get a point per game, that ain't going to be enough. 24 plus 12, 36 points. It might be enough, but are we going to draw every game? I don't think so. Graham, it's time for the team to sack Moyes, even if the club won't. It's time to ignore the idiot and fight to stay up. E. Davis, there's optimism and there's stupidity. David M., what is it that I'm hearing about Nick's exclusive about the relationship between manager and the players? I don't know. What exclusive? I've been doing my research and I've not heard anything. But, if someone else has got an exclusive, good for them. James, I still think we'll finish mid-table, even via the pragmatic approach. That is optimistic. Matt, Southampton will be happy with a point against us, but Sunday is a must-win for us. I totally agree. But it won't be enough for them, to be quite honest with you. But it's another point for them. I get it. But will they be happy? If we start badly, if they get their tails up, who knows? Is it time for us to use the likes of Fornal, Coufal, and Lanzini more? It's time for whoever's on that pitch to be doing the business. Now, I think, we heard it a few weeks ago where the players got together, and I talked about this in previous shows. We heard it a few times where the players got together and they talked about what they should do, and then we came out and had that great performance against Nottingham Forest. Maybe whatever it is they did then, whatever it is they discussed and agreed between them, they need to go back and do that. Almost despite Moyes. If Moyes turns around and says, be pragmatic, etc., the players, and it does sound like a bit of mutiny, but the players maybe should turn around and go, do you know what? We know what it takes to win this game. Let's form ourselves and get it done. Bees Knees, you cheer us up so Do I? Garino. Nick, doing a show at the moment, quoting a source that Moyes is hated within the club by coaches, players, and staff as he refuses to. That's not news, really. It's not breaking news either, to be quite honest with you. That news is what we've been hearing for quite some time. Is there a source? I don't know. You could include Antonio in that I discussed some time ago. You could include Ben Rama in that. You can include even Coufal in that. There's quite a lot of players that have said certain things. It's not breaking, though, to be quite honest with you. With the greatest respect to Nick, but it's not breaking. Good evening to you, Jim. I hope you're well. Daniela. I think we could have one more game with a pragmatic approach, but our forwards have missed so many chances. That is true. Matt, is there any truth in Moyes dropping Areola for Fab for the Southampton? No truth in it at all. We've just been speaking about that. We don't know. Fabianski is back training, but we don't know whether he'll be picked over Areola or not. Jonathan, did he have a heart attack after reviewed the West Ham season so far? Aaron, C. Phillips wants to leave Man City. Reckon a deal will be offered plus cash for Phillips and Rice. A lot of people have been saying that. There's speculation, but there's also speculation that he might go back to Leeds United as well. Peter, I think we are still, if he continues with this attitude, absolutely. Steve, if Moyes goes defensive on Sunday, I'm going to shoot him. Debbie and Mark, good evening to you. No problem. Glad you joined. What have I missed apart from the depression caused by Moyes? Not much, really. Talked about the internationals, and I talked a little bit about Coufal, looking at what he said about David Moyes. And the next part of the show is what he said about future owner. So give me a second, and we'll get on to that. So, we already talked about Coufal and what he said about the pragmatic Moyes, but also what's interesting is what he kind of said about in a comment he made. And I've been trying to decipher this for some time because it's all about the future ownership of the club and so on and so forth. You know, there's a couple of things about the club. First of all, in his comment he made about suggesting that the future owner is going to be Daniel Kretinsky. Now, it's interesting because I don't think the player himself used Daniel Kretinsky's name. The statement was, this is a question, when he was asked about the future of David Moyes, etc., he said, I'm not on the board and so on and so forth. This is a question for our future owner. And then in brackets, it said, entrepreneur Daniel Kretinsky, editor's notes. It looks like that the editor determined what Coufal didn't say. Coufal said it's a matter for the future manager or for the future owner, sorry. And I think it was interpreted as the editor decided, well, that's about Kretinsky. And I'm not so sure, to be quite honest with you. I'm not so sure he talked about Kretinsky because Kretinsky, we all know, is an investor in the club, you know, and he's got ownership in Sparta Prague. And that is the club that he currently owns. And he's going to have to sell his shares in Sparta Prague. We already know this. This is nothing new. He's going to have to sell his shares in Sparta Prague in order to become the new owner of West Ham United. I'm not so sure. I think maybe that the comment has been taken out of context. I think there is something in what Coufal said about maybe having a new owner, but he didn't say Daniel Kretinsky. You know, and I've been looking for a cut of that interview, and all I've found is just the script. I haven't seen a video or anything like that, and no one can actually tell me whether anyone has actually said he used the name Daniel Kretinsky, and it sounds like he didn't. But another issue is also the future ownership of West Ham United and also of the stadium. The London Stadium has got its issues. We've heard recently about, I did a video about a month or so ago where I talked about Daniel Kretinsky having met the LLDC, who currently run the stadium. There was a suggestion that Kretinsky was looking to buy the stadium outright, and there was speculation that this was part of a plan for West Ham to finally take ownership of the stadium itself. But if this meeting ever did happen, I don't think it was about the future ownership of the stadium. What we've recently heard is that the LLDC are talking about getting a bigger compensation for Daniel Kretinsky investing in West Ham United. Now, when Kretinsky bought his shares in West Ham United did pay a penalty to the LLDC to the tune of £2.6 million. However, the LLDC are claiming that they're due more money because of the ownership or because of the part ownership that Daniel Kretinsky has. Now, we know, or we've been hearing, that by the end of this decade, the stadium would have cost the taxpayer a fine tune of £1 billion. It's no surprise that the LLDC, therefore, are trying to claim back as much money from its anchor tenant as they can. It's believed that the LLDC have already spent a considerable amount of money on legal fees against West Ham United over the tenancy ever since we took it over. It's been suggested that so far they've spent over £7 million in legal fees against West Ham in one claim or another. Whether the LLDC win their claim or not with the whole Daniel Kretinsky thing is an interesting issue. We know that there was this clause built into the tenancy of West Ham United at this London Stadium, where by the end of March, in fact, it actually ended last Friday, if there was any change in ownership at West Ham, then there will be a forfeit to pay. West Ham United believe they've paid that forfeit. West Ham United believe that they've already spent £2.6 million as a forfeit for Kretinsky coming on. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if they do go to battle with West Ham. It's been on and off. There's been battles on and off for quite some time between the two, and it's not been a great relationship. The LLDC won't be in existence in another year or so's time, and then a decision has got to be made about the stadium. So it looks like, as I mentioned earlier, if there was a meeting between Kretinsky and the LLDC, it sounds as if it was more about maybe the ownership of West Ham or the shares that Kretinsky has, rather than any discussion that Kretinsky may have had about owning the stadium. But when it comes to the stadium ownership, it's no secret that Karen Brady has wanted to either run the stadium or, now we've heard, actually own the stadium. Now, we've been told for many, many times that West Ham United are not interested in owning the stadium, but they'd be more than happy to run it. Even though the stadium is losing quite a bit of money year in, year out, there's a feeling that if it was properly run with proper sponsorship and naming rights and a better running of the stadium, it could actually be a good money earner. And Brady has talked about running the stadium many times before, but there's never been a talk about owning the stadium until recently. What's interesting is last week, the Mail Online talked about, the whole operating of the stadium, about the legal issues that West Ham have had between West Ham and the LLDC. And now there's suggestion that behind closed doors, West Ham United wouldn't mind owning the stadium. And I received some redacted details from a friend, someone close to the club, showing quite a lot of conversations, email exchanges, etc., between Karen Brady and the LLDC about future ownership of the stadium. Talked about future running of it, and talked about also West Ham United being open to owning the stadium at some time in the future. Like I said, with the LLDC coming to cease to stop operating in the next year or so, something's got to happen with the stadium. Now, wouldn't we rather have some sort of control of the stadium rather than having someone else come in and take it over? Now, when it comes to the stadium contract, it's airtight. West Ham United can't be taken out of that. It is what it is. The stadium tenancy, us as anchor tenants, will be there throughout the 99-year lease. How long have we been there now? 6-7 years. So there's still over 90 years to go. So that will never go. Even if someone else does take over the stadium, they can't get us out as tenants. But I wonder if West Ham United would like to take over the running of it, or even the ownership, because if it's run properly, it's quite possible that it could become a good money-making opportunity. So it was quite interesting that even though West Ham have been saying we'd like to run the stadium and not own it, Now, these redacted details that were sent out last week seem to suggest that West Ham United are quite open to owning the stadium. So I think it'd be interesting to see what happens over time. And then, of course, the other bit of news that we heard about West Ham this week is that Chelsea are looking at a possibility of a ground share. It ain't just West Ham, it ain't just the London Stadium, but also they've got Twickenham Rugby Ground, Fulham, and maybe even Wembley as options. Now, in my mind, I think that Chelsea would probably want to stay in their vicinity. You know, if it's the ground share at Fulham, or even use the rugby ground at Twickenham, I think they'd rather that. Worst case scenario, they'll probably go to Wembley. Would they want to ground share at West Ham? I don't know. I think it'd be quite an interesting one, but I don't think the LLDC will turn their nose up at it, because West Ham won't have a say in it. It'll be the LLDC who will make that decision. And given that we don't have a great relationship between us and the LLDC, they could grant Chelsea ground share with us. I don't know how well that will go down, to be quite honest with you, but it'll be an interesting thing to watch out for over the next few weeks or next few months. Right, let's go into your chat. Steve, as you know, I've been a fan for 52 years. Used to go to every game at Upton Park. Haven't been to the Olympic Stadium in 2 years. I hate the place. There is also talk about revamping it, you know, internally. You know, apparently some West Ham fan on Twitter looked at sort of, he's an architect. He redesigned the stadium. It looks quite nice. It's probably doable, but it'll cost a pretty penny. And I just wonder if West Ham did take it over, whether they will redesign the interior of it. Garino, still, by all accounts, the source is not a player, but someone from the club. Okay. I don't know the story, so that's quite interesting. Daniela, still, anyone regarding the under-18s game can I get a ticket on the night of the stadium? Do you mean the semi-final? Yes, you can. They are on sale. There are still quite a few, but you probably can get them on the night. E. Davis, I do not want Phillips at West Ham. It's just too typical. Yeah, but, you know, I don't think he'll go to West Ham. I think he'll end up back at Leeds, to be honest with you. Matt, Daniel, I think near Jay, there's another ticketing office near the Bell. There is a ticket office there, definitely. James, how are you? I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. James, Downs would be the natural replacement for Rice, in my opinion. I like Downs. I think he's a very good player. James, yeah, LLDC reckon we still owe them money. That's what the latest dispute is about. Bill, Kretinsky and his staff are looking after the business side. They're leaving the playing side to others. They're only looking for the future profits. Exactly what I've said many a time. Kretinsky's an investor. He's only interested in the business side of West Ham United. I don't think he really has that much of an interest to run West Ham, the club. And you're absolutely right there, Bill. Steve, who's the on the pick stander? Matt, head-to-heads versus Southampton, played 41, won 19, drawn 10, lost 12. I'll say 3-1, Benny Bowen and Skamaka. That's good. I hope so. I hope so. Matt, wished I could stay longer, but no problem, mate. Thank you for joining. Much appreciated. Daniela, what should the LLDC in the foot was COVID? What shot them in the foot was COVID, where they could not hold other events like concerts, plus no big athletics events coming to the UK. It was a big mistake. Absolutely. They should never have done it as a dual purpose stadium. Definitely. If they turned it into a proper footballing stadium, it would have been much better off. Steve, should have built a new stadium on the ground of the Royd. I didn't understand that, mate. John, LLDC refused to talk to Brady about the stadium until they resolved the legal issues ongoing. Aaron, and that's weird, isn't it? You know, we're anchor tenants. We want to talk to Brady about, we want to talk to LLDC about the future of the stadium. And yet the LLDC are kind of like turning a blind eye to it. It's really weird. They'd rather go to court rather than sort of doing something that might be amicable for both LLDC, the stadium, the whole setup. Aaron, how value does owning the stadium add to West Ham? How much value does it add to it? That's an interesting question, to be quite honest with you. I'm not so sure what value it would add to it, to be honest with you. Steve, should have built a new stadium at the old Royal Mail. Oh, Royal Mail parcel place near the train station. Good shout. What else we got here? Peter. I don't think I'll be bothered in 90 years' time. Debbie and Mark, First, they steal all 3 points due to the Mendy drama antics stopping us gaining a point. Then they think they can get Rice for cheap this summer coming. Now they think they can share the stadium as well. Do you want them at the stadium? I don't think that even they would want to come to the stadium, to be quite honest with you. I'd be very, very surprised. Daniela, rugby crowd won't want to share with Twickenham. Adam, there's got to be a clause between West Ham and the LLDC where West Ham can be the only team in there. I think we'd be stupid not to have that in writing. That's an interesting point, and I don't know. But I bet you that'll be something that the LLDC would want to use against us to prove that they could rent the stadium out better to another team. Because I doubt very much if Chelsea did want to come in to share it, I doubt very much they'll get it for a pittance like we did. James, when I win the Euro billions, I'll dig down at the London Stadium, hiring Japanese engineers and Dutch plumbers. Well, there is water underneath, I'm led to believe, so you can't dig further down. I could be wrong though. Jonathan, if Kretinsky only wants profits, then why is Moyes still here? James again, is there a relegation clause? You can fill it from there. I don't know. There might be. If we go down, we might pay even less rent for it. There you go. Right, people, because there's no other news, that's been it. I don't know what news Claret and Booze have got, but if you want to go over there and watch them, great. I don't know what the breaking news is. There isn't any other news for West Ham. There'll be other stories coming up. Do join me for that. Thank you for joining. A very short show, under an hour, but much appreciated. Thank you for your comments, and I'll see you all very soon.